I still remember the day everything quietly shifted. It was a Thursday morning, too early for trouble, too peaceful for anything dramatic. I was walking toward the glass entrance of Grayson and Hill Financial, the company I had served loyally for 11 years, when a man I had never seen before stepped out from behind one of the tall potted plants in the lobby. He looked like someone who didn't belong there: old denim jacket, rough beard, eyes that had seen more winters than I could count. He didn't try to stop me directly. He just spoke as I walked past him. "You're being watched," he said in a calm, almost tired voice. I froze. Not because of fear, but because of the strange certainty in his tone. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't threatening. It was simply true. Or at least it sounded that way. I turned to look at him, but before I could ask anything, he walked away, slowly, as if he had done what he came for and nothing more. At that moment, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know why he chose me. I didn't know that his warning would save me from the biggest betrayal of my life. When people speak of betrayal, they talk about lovers, friends, family. But workplace betrayal, it cuts in a different way. It feels cleaner, quieter, like a knife sliding between your ribs while someone pats your back with the other hand. I walked into the elevator wondering what the stranger meant. And when the elevator doors opened on the 6th floor, and I stepped into the office, I saw the very first sign. My manager, Linda Shaw, and my coworker, Eric Miles, stood near my desk with nervous expressions. When they noticed me, they jumped slightly, like children caught with their hands in the cookie jar. The unknown man was right. I was being watched. And the worst part? The people watching me were the ones I trusted most. That morning was the beginning of a very long lesson. A lesson about patience, silence, and quiet revenge. My name is David Harper, and for most of my career, I believed in straight lines. Work hard, be honest, stay loyal, and the world responds in kind. Grayson and Hill was the kind of place where ambition smelled like fresh coffee and printer ink. Everyone walked fast, talked fast, and dreamed fast. I joined the company in my late 20s. Young, hopeful, eager. I rose through the ranks steadily, becoming the senior financial analyst everyone came to when numbers got messy. I wasn't flashy, not political, not particularly charismatic. But I was dependable, and people trusted me. Among them were Linda, my manager, and Eric, my colleague. Linda had been my mentor at one point. A woman who built her career on confidence and sharp instincts. She liked being in control, liked being praised, liked being needed. She once told me, "David, the trick to surviving in this industry isn't brilliance. It's knowing when to speak and when to stay silent." Ironically, her words would come back later in ways she never expected. Eric, on the other hand, was one of those young analysts who acted like they were born with a Bluetooth headset attached to their ear. Loud, energetic, always joking but always calculating. He liked shortcuts. He liked admiration. He liked climbing ladders 2 rungs at a time. I didn't dislike them. I just didn't realize how easily people change when ambition starts to burn a little too hot. 3 months before the stranger's warning, our company announced a massive merger. New leadership. New positions. New opportunities that smelled like money and prestige. A promotion was coming, one that would place someone directly under the new board. Everyone wanted it. I didn't think I had enemies. I wasn't competing. I was simply doing my job the way I always had. But ambition changes people. It reveals parts of them you never knew existed. Little things started happening. Reports I prepared went missing. Numbers I triple-checked suddenly appeared flawed. Meetings I was supposed to attend never made it to my inbox. Documents were printed with errors I never made. I chalked it up to stress, to the merger, to the chaos of change. Until the stranger approached me that morning and said, "You're being watched." Only then did I look at things with new eyes. As the day unfolded, I paid attention. Linda seemed nervous when I walked into her office. Eric avoided eye contact. There were whispers when I passed by. People smiled too quickly. It felt like stepping into a room where someone had just been talking about you. And I kept hearing Linda's old advice echoing in my mind. Knowing when to stay silent is power. Maybe silence was the right choice after all. Maybe watching quietly would help me understand the game being played. That night, as I sat in my car in the parking lot, the stranger's voice came back to me.
You're being watched. By who?
And why? I didn't know the answers yet.
But I would.
And when I finally discovered the truth, my silence would become my greatest weapon. The real trouble began the following week. A quarterly report I had been working on for 3 days, a detailed analysis worth millions in projected decisions, was suddenly labeled incomplete, inaccurate, and concerning. The email came from Linda. Copied to the new board members. Copied to Eric. Copied to half the department. My stomach tightened as I read her words. David, we have reviewed your numbers. They are significantly flawed. We need to discuss this immediately.
Flawed? Not possible.
I walked straight to her office, but the look she gave me was rehearsed. She acted disappointed. She acted like she expected this from me.
Take a seat, she said gently.
Linda, I replied, keeping my voice steady, those numbers were correct. I verified them.
She sighed. Look, David. I know you're stressed.
The merger is putting pressure on all of us. But these mistakes? They're starting to affect the team.
Mistakes. Plural.
I felt the floor shift a little.
Starting. I asked.
What other mistakes? She looked at me as if she were sad for me. But there was something cold dancing behind her eyes. Your missed meeting last week. The budget review sheet that had missing data. The email to the director that you forgot to send.
I didn't forget, I said.
I never received.
She cut me off.
David, you don't need to defend yourself. But you need to understand that corporate responsibility matters.
There it was. That subtle shift.
A quiet repositioning. Like someone slowly moving a chess piece across the board. When I stepped out of her office, I passed by Eric. He smiled, a small, tight smile. You okay, man? He asked, as if he were concerned.
Fine, I said. Cool.
Just checking in. But there was something off in his tone.
Something smug.
Later that day, as I reviewed the flawed report, I found something chilling. The numbers had been changed. Not drastically, but just enough to make it look careless. Errors inserted in places I would never touch. Edits made at 2:14 a.m., hours when I was home asleep. Someone accessed my files. Someone edited my work. Someone wanted me to look incompetent.
But who?
There were only 2 people with access to my shared drive besides me.
Linda. And Eric. I didn't say a word. Not yet.
Instead, I began observing. Over the next 2 weeks, I noticed patterns. Files I printed were later found in the recycling bin, crumpled and altered. My computer screen was touched when I returned from short breaks. My chair was moved a few inches every morning. People avoided saying my name in conversations. One afternoon near the break room, I overheard 2 co-workers whispering. Linda said he's slipping.
Yeah, shame.
He used to be good. Eric's been stepping up though. Management loves him. And then it clicked. I finally understood. Linda wanted the promotion. Eric wanted the promotion. I stood between them. But instead of competing fairly, they chose a quieter route. They began building a narrative that I was unreliable, outdated, and incompetent. A liability in the new corporate structure. And to sell that story, they had to make it true. Or at least make it look true. I should have confronted them then. But something held me back. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was wisdom. Maybe it was the memory of the stranger's warning. You're being watched. I needed to know who he was. Why he warned me. And what he knew. One night, after everyone left, I stayed in the office pretending to finish some work. But really, I was waiting to see who would show up. At 9:43 p.m., I heard the elevator ding. Footsteps echoed down the empty hall.
And then I saw him. Not the stranger. Eric. He walked straight to my desk, opened my drawer, took out a folder,
and replaced it with another. I watched from the shadowy corner of the conference room, heart steady, breathing calm. He wasn't just framing me. He was building a case, a whole portfolio of mistakes. And he wasn't doing it alone. Linda arrived 10 minutes later. I watched her take photos of documents, whispering instructions to Eric. "You're doing great," she told him softly. "The board needs to see a pattern. Once he's out of the running, they'll have no choice but to look at us."
Us.
So that was it. They weren't competitors. They were partners. Partners in betrayal. That night, something inside me went cold. Not angry.
Not bitter. Just silent.
Silent the way the ocean becomes calm before a storm. From that moment on, I knew what I had to do. I just didn't know how deep the truth would go, or how far the quiet revenge would reach. And I certainly didn't know that the stranger who warned me wasn't a stranger at all.
Not to Linda.
Not to Eric. And definitely not to Grayson and Hill. The shift began with a decision, a quiet one, made in the stillness of my living room on a rainy evening. I wasn't going to fight them with anger. I wasn't going to expose them with yelling or accusations. If they wanted a narrative, I would write a better one.
A truer one. A quieter one.
The first step was understanding the stranger's role in this entire thing. The next morning, as I walked into the lobby, I scanned the area where he had appeared weeks earlier. For the first time, I noticed something I had overlooked. He wasn't just standing near the plant that day. He was standing near the security office.
An idea formed.
I approached the head of security, an older man named Mark Dalton, who knew me well enough to trust my calm tone. "Mark, was there maintenance work on the security cameras recently?"
I asked. He frowned. "Which floor?" "6th.
He sighed and leaned back in his chair.
"Yeah.
Someone requested access 2 weeks in a row."
"Who?"
He clicked through a few screens, then turned the monitor toward me.
"Access approved. Linda Shaw. Eric Miles."
They had requested camera blind spots.
Temporary shutdowns.
Areas where they could manipulate my workspace without being seen. But something else caught my eye. A name listed under visitor access on the same day I met the stranger.
Jonathan Miles. Miles.
The same last name as Eric.
My heart slowed. Pieces clicked.
"Do you have footage of that visitor?"
I asked. Mark pulled it up.
And there he was, the stranger.
Worn jacket. Tired eyes. But this time he looked scared. Nervous.
Not for himself, but for someone else. Why did he come here?
I asked. Mark shrugged.
He asked for Eric. But Eric told us to send him away. So the stranger wasn't a random warning. He was connected to the people betraying me. I needed to find him. After work, I spent hours searching online, public records, social media, street listings. Eventually, I found a match. Jonathan Miles, 62 years old.
Eric's estranged father.
The next morning, I drove to the address I found, a small, aging trailer park outside the city. I found Jonathan sitting outside, fixing a broken lawn chair. He looked up, and recognition flashed across his face. "You're the man from the office," I said gently.
He nodded slowly.
"I told you the truth. You're being watched."
"By your son," I said.
His shoulders sagged.
"By my son," he confirmed.
He took a deep breath before continuing. "Eric, he's not a bad kid. But he wants things too fast. He burns bridges. Uses people. Hurts himself more than anyone else."
"And Linda?" I asked. He looked away, ashamed.
She's the one pulling the strings. Eric just wants her approval. He always picks the wrong mentors. I sat down beside him on the wooden step. Why warn me? I asked quietly. His voice cracked a little. Because I worked at Grayson and Hill 25 years ago. I was fired for something I didn't do. Linda's father blamed me for a financial loss he caused.
And now
I saw history repeating itself.
Linda's father, the former CEO.
The man who ran the company before the merger. So Linda learned it from him, I said.
Jonathan nodded.
She learned that success isn't earned.
It's taken.
For the first time, I understood the full picture.
The lies. The manipulation. The sabotage.
It wasn't just ambition. It was legacy. A legacy of stepping on people to rise. But this time, they stepped on the wrong person.
I stood up.
Can I ask you something, Jonathan?
Anything.
Would you be willing to tell the truth if I needed you to?
He hesitated, just for a heartbeat. Then he nodded.
If it means breaking the cycle, yes. That evening, I set my plan in motion. I requested access to the digital logs. I documented every file access, every timestamp, every time my computer was used after hours. I located the blind spots Linda and Eric created. I requested the footage outside those blind spots, enough to show patterns, entrances, exits. I printed copies of my real reports, time-stamped, verified, untouched by their edits. I prepared a quiet, thorough, unshakable case. But the last piece, the one piece that tied everything together, came from Jonathan. He wrote a sworn statement describing the pattern of behavior he witnessed decades earlier from Linda's father, how he framed innocent employees for his own financial mistakes. A legacy Linda had continued. A legacy Eric had joined. I didn't speak a word to anyone. Not even when Linda tried to mentor me with false concern. Not even when Eric mocked me gently in passing. Silence was my shield. And when the board scheduled final interviews for the promotion, including mine, the moment had arrived. Not to destroy them with anger. Not to ruin them with noise. But to let the truth speak quietly. Cleanly. And completely. The interview room was unusually bright. 3 board members sat behind a long wooden table, new leaders with sharp eyes and patient expressions. David, the chairwoman said, "We've been concerned about recent reports regarding your performance. We want to discuss those before moving on." I nodded calmly. Of course. Linda and Eric sat in the back, pretending to look supportive, though their eyes betrayed anticipation. They expected me to crumble. They expected me to defend myself emotionally and fail. Instead, I opened a folder. "I'd like to address the concerns with documented transparency," I said softly. The board leaned forward. I placed the first sheet on the table. "These," I continued, "are the original reports I submitted. Time-stamped. Verified. Untouched." Then I placed the altered versions beside them. "These are the versions that were later accessed and modified." The board compared them, eyes narrowing. Next, I provided the log files. "These documents show who accessed my files and when. You'll notice multiple entries outside my working hours." A pause. A realization. A shift. "And here," I said quietly, "is the list of people with access to my drive." I slid the page across. Only 2 names were listed besides mine. Linda Shaw. Eric Miles. The room fell silent. Linda's breathing changed. Eric's posture stiffened. I wasn't done. "These are the requests submitted for temporary camera blind spots on the 6th floor. They were requested under Linda Shaw's authorization, twice." One board member frowned deeply. Another whispered to the chairwoman. Then I placed the final document on the table. "This," I said gently, "is a sworn statement from a former employee. He describes identical behavior from the previous leadership, fabricating errors, framing others for personal gain. He is also the father of one of the individuals involved in this matter. The board members read Jonathan's statement slowly, carefully. Not once did I raise my voice. Not once did I accuse anyone with emotion. I let the truth speak for itself. Finally, I looked up. I don't wish harm on anyone, I said. But I do believe in fairness. And I believe you deserve to see what has been happening behind closed doors. The chairwoman took a deep breath. David, why didn't you come to us earlier? Because, I said softly, I wanted to understand the full picture. And I wanted to act with clarity, not anger. What happened next unfolded quietly, almost anticlimactically. The board excused me. I left the room. Linda and Eric were asked to stay. I didn't see what happened inside. I didn't hear their explanations. I didn't need to. By the end of the week, Linda was placed on indefinite suspension pending investigation. Eric was terminated for accessing and altering confidential data. Jonathan was thanked privately and compensated for past wrongful dismissal. And the board requested a private meeting with me. In that meeting, they offered me the promotion. Not because I was brilliant. Not because I was charming. But because I stayed patient when others panicked. Quiet when others schemed. Honest when others lied. When I walked out of the boardroom with the offer letter in hand, I felt no triumph. Just a deep, quiet relief. Revenge isn't fire. It isn't fury. Real revenge is truth delivered calmly. Naturally. Without shouting, without anger. Just clarity. And clarity had finally arrived. A few days after everything settled, I returned to the old trailer park. Jonathan was fixing a mailbox this time. He looked up when he saw me. "It's done?" he asked. "It's done," I said with a gentle nod. He let out a long breath, a breath he had probably been holding for years. "I didn't do it for revenge," he whispered. "I did it because I didn't want my son to become the kind of man who hurts people for power." "I know," I said. "Did you get the job?" "Yes." He smiled, faint but real. "Good. Maybe now things will change there." We sat in silence for a few minutes. Two men who had been wronged by the same family, decades apart. "David," he said softly, "I'm sorry for what they did." "I'm not," I replied. He looked surprised. And I continued, "Because it taught me something." He waited. "It taught me that anger is loud, but truth is quiet. And quiet truth lasts longer." Jonathan nodded slowly, absorbing it. When I left that day, I felt lighter. In the weeks that followed, the company adjusted. New policies were written. Tighter security was implemented. Merit, not manipulation, became the standard once again. Some co-workers apologized for believing the worst about me. Others stayed silent, embarrassed. I didn't hold it against them. People believe whatever story is repeated the most. And for a while, Linda and Eric repeated theirs very convincingly. But in the end, truth doesn't need repetition. It just needs the right moment. Now, whenever I walk into my office, my own office, I still think about the stranger's warning. You're being watched. I smile to myself sometimes, because I understand now. We are always being watched. Not by enemies. Not by co-workers. Not by people waiting for us to fail. But by life. Life watches what we do with our pain. Whether we let it poison us or shape